I'm Carl Mills, and welcome to video 8. In this video, we will be selecting the material, preparing it, and I will demonstrate the carving process of the neck. The important factors to remember is the grain pattern and the density of the neck for the instrument that you are constructing. As you gain experience, you will gain proficiency and accuracy. And remember, when working on the violin, work accurately and carefully, and you will have a fine-sounding instrument. In this first segment, we're going to discuss selecting your wood. You can purchase your wood from a supplier, and it'll usually come in a shape much like this. It's a wedge cut. Check your grain pattern where the fingerboard will be, and check your pattern of the grain running through the block. That is basically a horizontal grain pattern. On some instruments, the grain pattern running horizontally due to the tension of the strings will actually cause the neck to bow and flex. On violins, that is a common trait because most of your grain pattern in the necks are horizontal. If you have a piece of wood that is a little too weak, meaning not enough density, you can actually reorient it so that the grain pattern is running vertical in the block from heel to fingerboard. Once you've selected your block, you must glue on some excess wood, usually just scrap wood, to the sides of the block. The sides must be square with the surface where the fingerboard will mount. This is the block of wood that I have selected. It is of quilted maple from the same billet that the back and the sides were cut from. I wanted to keep the same flaming pattern in the neck as I had on the back. The important consideration for this piece was the grain orientation. It runs at a slight angle horizontally through the block, and the grain pattern is fairly wide, approximately 1/8 of an inch to 1/16 of an inch, and sometimes a little bit more in between the ringwood and the pulpwood. We first start by making patterns off of the plan. You can either trace them or photocopy them. But if you photocopy them, remember that the photocopy will have a lot of errors in it, and you have to go back through and correct it. So it's easier just to go ahead and just trace them with a piece of tracing paper so that you got a fairly accurate outline of the neck. There's 3 patterns that I make. The neck side view, the fingerboard pattern, and you have to calculate the scroll pattern. This is the heel of the scroll. Here is a pre-carved neck that you can purchase and eliminate a lot of this work. But this pattern actually fits right on the heel and curves around to give you your shape, which will mark the shape of the fluting for the scroll on each side. starting at the heel of the neck, you will remove material in this area after the scroll is carved. We will remove material from this portion right at the toe where the scroll starts, around the scroll, and the top of the peg box. Here I have transferred the pattern of the side of the neck to the neck block with the proper grain orientation. The fingerboard template to trace the pattern for the fingerboard on the top of the neck. I transferred the line for the string nut onto the top, so I know exactly where the string nut will sit in this location. With the peg holes laid out in their proper position according to your pattern, the first thing you must do is take it over to a drill press and drill a hole, a pilot hole, through those locations. You must ensure that the drill bit is square with the work, and also when you do drill approximately 1/4 inch into the hole and back your drill bit completely out. Let the chips clear before you start again. If you try to drill through in one push, a lot of times the drill bit will actually deflect and you will not have a straight hole. It is very important to have straight peg holes. When I drill, I make the holes all the way through, and sometimes it will actually tear out the wood. This is why the excess material on the side of the peg box is left in place, so that you can get those holes drilled and not really worry about that tear out. You can reduce the chance of tear out by putting a piece of sacrificial wood underneath, or by using a brad point bit, and both if you really want to avoid it. I'll now use a bandsaw to cut the shape from the toe, around the scroll, and above the peg box, and remove the excess material. Here, the area of the toe where the fluting starts on the scroll work, the excess material has been removed all the way around and on top of the peg box. You must work slowly when using the bandsaw or a coping saw and leave excess material above the marked line so that you can remove that material by hand, thereby removing the kerf of the saw. I will now have to lay out the peg box and then perform 2 other cuts coming in from the side in this direction to cut off the excess material of the sides of the peg box.